thinking about this holiday and I'm thinking, I really wish I was jetting back to the States. Like, I really wish I was going to Texas or Tennessee or a southern state or like Louisiana or Nashville or something, because Europe, I think it's had enough of me.
Guys, we have a huge problem. James and I are so bored already of the UK. We haven't even been back for 7 days and we're already planning our next trip to America. When I tell you, America is the most gorgeous, most beautiful place I have ever seen in my life, I am not joking. The nature, the scenery, the people, everything about America I have fallen head over heels for. And we only explored the tiniest part of America and we were mind blown. This is how crazy America is, in the best way possible. Driving along in the RV, going through these beautiful roads, trees everywhere, pretty much in the mountains, in the forest. Next minute, you're in the desert. Sand, rocks, cactus, cacti, whatever you call them. And I was so confused because like an hour ago we were just in the forest and then you just keep going through different sceneries and nature all the time. And it's like, how is this possible? For example, we were in Sedona. There was a massive snowstorm. It looked like Narnia. It looked like I had just stepped out the wardrobes into Narnia. Snow everywhere, snow on the mountains. It was beautiful.
The only issue is the sun's in the wrong place.
And then the next minute, we drive 2 hours away. We're in Page, back in the desert, sand, sun. I'm being completely serious right now. We will jump on a plane next week and come back to America. If someone can suggest us the best place to go next. We love nature, we love scenery, we love good gyms. We need good gyms because James is a bodybuilder and we like going to the gym. We like good hikes, we like good drives, we like good food. So if anyone can suggest us the best place for us to go next in America, honestly, we might go back very, very soon.
What if the America Europeans were warned about is not the America they found? In 2026, US airports are filling with European travelers who came expecting chaos, high prices, and disappointment, then started extending trips, changing plans, and wondering why going home suddenly felt like the worst option. So what did America show them that headlines never could, and why are so many coming back for more? JFK, America Unfiltered. The first surprise at JFK in 2026 is not the Manhattan skyline, the yellow cabs, or even the size of the terminal. It is how quickly one very stubborn image of America begins to fall apart the moment European visitors actually step onto American ground. For months, many people arriving for the 2026 World Cup had been exposed to the same familiar headlines. America was supposedly too divided, too expensive, too chaotic, too unsafe, and somehow no longer worth the trouble. Read enough of that from a sofa in London, Paris, Berlin, or Amsterdam, and the United States can start sounding less like a vacation and more like a survival challenge with airport Wi-Fi. Then JFK opens its doors and reality refuses to cooperate with the script. What people meet first is not some dystopian movie scene. They meet families dragging oversized suitcases, airport workers answering the same question for the 100th time, travelers grabbing coffee, cab drivers loading bags, and complete strangers giving directions with the confidence of someone who has personally appointed himself Assistant Mayor of Queens. That ordinary warmth matters more than it sounds. In much of Northern Europe, public interactions are often polite but restrained. In cities such as Stockholm, Copenhagen, or Helsinki, personal space is treated almost like valuable real estate. New York works differently. Someone may ask where you are from before the elevator reaches the ground floor, recommend 3 pizza places before you have unpacked, and then argue passionately about which one is the only correct answer. For many European visitors, that social openness becomes one of the first cracks in the picture they had been given of America. JFK also introduces another very American habit, making travel feel possible on a huge scale. From one arrival point, visitors can move into Manhattan, stay in Queens or Brooklyn, take rail connections, rent a car, continue toward New England, or turn a football trip into a much larger American journey. In countries such as Belgium or the Netherlands, crossing a large part of the nation can take only a few hours. Around New York, a few hours can still leave you somewhere inside the gravitational pull of the same giant city. That scale stops feeling excessive once people begin enjoying it, and this is where the World Cup trip becomes something more interesting than sport. Some Europeans came expecting to watch matches and go home with photos. Instead, they encountered a country that felt friendlier, more open, more varied, and far more enjoyable in daily life than the version they had absorbed from a distance. The irony is almost too neat. They crossed the Atlantic expecting America to prove the headlines right. JFK was barely the front door, and America had already started making a very different argument. Atlanta Airport. Atlanta is where a European vacation can quietly turn into an American addiction, because this airport makes one dangerous idea feel completely reasonable. Since you are already here, why not see another state? That sounds ordinary to Americans. From a European perspective, however, the geography behind it is almost comical. Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport has repeatedly ranked among the world's busiest airports. Airports Council International recorded roughly 104.7 million passengers there in 2023. The airport operates 5 parallel runways, while its underground plane train moves passengers through a chain of concourses so efficiently that an airport large enough to resemble a small city somehow behaves like a giant transfer machine. That matters because Atlanta reveals something about America that television arguments rarely capture. Americans built an entire travel culture around distance. In Western Europe, distance is often conquered by rail. Paris to Brussels takes roughly an hour and a half by high-speed train. Amsterdam to Brussels can be done in around 2 hours. London and Paris are linked beneath the English Channel. European travelers are accustomed to watching countries change outside a train window. America offers a different pleasure. Here, enormous distances become invitations. Atlanta functions as one of the great switching stations of that system. A visitor who originally came to the United States for the 2026 World Cup can suddenly look at the departure board and realize that Florida, Tennessee, Texas, New York, Louisiana, Colorado, and dozens of other possibilities are only another flight away. In Europe, adding another country to a trip often means crossing a border. In America, you can fly hundreds of miles, land somewhere culturally different, and the phone still works, the currency stays the same, and nobody asks for another passport stamp. That convenience becomes strangely seductive. A few days in New York can become barbecue in Georgia, Georgia can become beaches in Florida. Then somebody notices that Nashville is not terribly far away by American standards, which is the moment Europeans begin discovering that the phrase, "not terribly far," has a completely different legal definition in the United States. Americans will drive 3 hours for a college football game and describe the trip as manageable. In Belgium, 3 hours can nearly carry you across the country. That difference changes how visitors understand American size. What first looked excessive begins to feel like freedom of choice. The country is so geographically broad that every additional flight seems to unlock another personality. Desert, mountains, Gulf Coast, Deep South, Great Lakes, New England, Pacific coastline. This may be one of the least discussed reasons America becomes difficult to leave after an extended stay. The trip never feels finished. There's always another regional food, another city, another landscape, another accent, another version of American life sitting a boarding pass away. Atlanta does not merely connect flights. It introduces Europeans to the very American temptation of looking at an enormous country and thinking, with remarkable confidence, we're already here. And that sentence has probably destroyed more carefully planned return itineraries than anyone would like to admit. Miami International Airport. Miami International Airport has a wonderful way of ruining one of the laziest ideas about America before the luggage carousel has even finished turning. The idea that American culture comes in one standard package. Around Miami, that theory lasts about as long as an ice cube on South Beach. The deeper reason European visitors can become fascinated with this city is not simply sunshine or palm trees. It is the realization that the United States can absorb enormous cultural influences without losing its American identity. Miami is one of the clearest examples. According to U.S. Census Bureau estimates from the early 2020s, roughly 7 in 10 residents of Miami-Dade County identify as Hispanic or Latino, while Spanish is heard so routinely in everyday life that switching between English and Spanish can feel less like a special event and more like changing radio stations in the car. That can be genuinely refreshing for travelers whose picture of America was built mostly from political coverage. European countries are diverse too, but the structure often works differently. Madrid feels unmistakably Spanish, Lisbon unmistakably Portuguese, and Rome unmistakably Italian, even with large immigrant communities woven into each city. Miami feels American while also carrying Cuban, Colombian, Venezuelan, Haitian, Caribbean, and broader Latin American influences through food, music, family life, and everyday speech. The interesting part is that these identities do not sit politely in separate display cases. They mix. A Cuban coffee can be part of an ordinary American workday. Spanish can fill a supermarket aisle while an NFL game plays on a television nearby. Latin music can pour from a restaurant located beneath an American flag without anyone treating the combination as unusual. Miami does not seem concerned with explaining the contradiction because, locally, there really is no contradiction. That is exactly where the city becomes addictive. People arrive expecting to see America, then discover that America is large enough to contain several worlds at once. According to Miami International Airport, more than 52 million passengers passed through MIA in 2023, a record at the time, and the airport's extraordinary international reach helps explain why the city feels less like the edge of the United States and more like a front porch facing the Americas. For Europeans arriving during the 2026 World Cup, that can scramble the old mental picture quickly. The America they may have expected from television looks culturally flatter, angrier, and much easier to summarize. Miami refuses to be summarized. It is multilingual without feeling uncertain about itself. It is internationally influenced without becoming less American. It can serve a cafecito strong enough to restart a pickup truck, then send you past a sports bar full of people arguing about American teams 10 minutes later. That combination reveals something powerful about the United States. American culture has often grown by making room for new influences and then turning the mixture into something local. Once visitors understand that, America becomes harder to reduce to a headline, and Miami becomes dangerously easy to miss after you leave. Orlando International Airport. Orlando International Airport may be one of the few places on Earth where a grown adult can land carrying a serious face, a passport, and a carefully organized itinerary, then lose all three emotionally the moment the vacation machinery kicks in. That is the real secret of Orlando. The attraction is not simply that America built famous theme parks. Europe has excellent ones too. Disneyland Paris draws millions of visitors each year, Germany has Europa Park, and the Netherlands has Efteling, one of the continent's most beloved family destinations. The difference in Central Florida is the sheer scale of the world built around having fun. According to Orlando International Airport, MCO handled more than 57 million passengers in 2023, making it one of the busiest airports in the United States. That number makes more sense once you understand Orlando is something larger than a city with a few attractions. Here, entertainment behaves like an industry district. Resorts, restaurants, highways, shuttle systems, outlet malls, themed hotels, water parks, convention centers, and entire neighborhoods of vacation rentals all orbit the same basic promise. If you came here to enjoy yourself, America intends to make that a full-time occupation. That can feel surprisingly different to European visitors. In Paris, a major attraction may sit inside a dense, historic city where daily life continues around it. In London, museums, theaters, and landmarks are woven into neighborhoods that existed long before mass tourism. Orlando reverses the formula. Large sections of the region were designed specifically to make leisure easy, visible, and almost impossible to ignore. There's something wonderfully American about that confidence. Americans have never been shy about turning an idea into an ecosystem. If families like roller coasters, build more of them. If they stay for a week, create hotels that continue the fantasy after the gates close. If children want breakfast with fictional characters, apparently breakfast now requires a reservation and a camera. The joke practically writes itself, but the cultural point is serious. Many Europeans arrive with an image of the United States shaped by news about politics, healthcare, crime, or social division. Those subjects are real and complicated, yet they are poor substitutes for everyday experience. Orlando introduces a different America, organized around families having fun together, workers making strangers feel welcome, and an almost stubborn belief that enjoyment deserves serious investment. That attitude can become addictive because it gives adults permission to stop acting impressed by nothing. In much of Europe, understatement has social value. A spectacular meal may earn a calm, quite good. A beautiful hotel might receive a restrained nod. America is less interested in pretending excitement is embarrassing. Orlando practically hands you a giant soda and says, "You flew 9 hours. You're allowed to enjoy this." And many visitors do. By the time the World Cup trip begins stretching into extra days, Orlando exposes one reason some Europeans become reluctant to leave. America can make ordinary leisure feel like an event worth remembering. The country does not whisper fun into the itinerary. It puts it on a highway sign the size of a garage door and gives you 3 exits to think about it. Los Angeles International Airport. Los Angeles has a curious way of making Europeans rethink one word they thought they understood perfectly: outside. Around LAX, being outdoors is not treated as an activity that requires hiking boots, a reservation, or a national holiday. It can simply mean eating breakfast on a patio, walking beside the Pacific after work, exercising under palm trees, or spending an afternoon on a beach that belongs to everyone rather than to the hotel directly behind it. That last detail is where Southern California becomes especially interesting. California has roughly 840 miles of coastline, and the state's coastal policy strongly protects public access to the shore. Beaches such as Santa Monica, Venice, Manhattan Beach, and Malibu are woven into ordinary life around Los Angeles, creating something that can feel surprisingly generous to visitors arriving from parts of Southern Europe where access to prime beachfront space often works differently. Italy offers the clearest contrast. Along many Italian coasts, private beach clubs known as stabilimenti balneari occupy large stretches of sand with visitors paying for umbrellas, loungers, and services. France has magnificent public beaches too, but famous resort areas along the Côte d'Azur also include private concessions where a front row day beside the Mediterranean can quickly become an item on the credit card statement. Southern California presents another idea. Some of the most cinematic scenery in the country is simply part of the public landscape. There's something deeply American about that. A European traveler can arrive for the 2026 World Cup expecting Los Angeles to be all velvet ropes, celebrities and expensive hotels, then discover families carrying coolers onto the sand, teenagers playing volleyball, runners using beachfront paths, surfers walking barefoot across parking lots, and people watching a Pacific sunset without buying a ticket for the privilege. The beach does not ask what hotel you booked. That accessibility changes the emotional texture of a stay. Life begins to feel less scheduled. A free afternoon no longer needs a museum reservation or a carefully planned excursion. Somebody can grab food, drive west and let the Pacific handle the entertainment. Even the scale feels distinctly American. Santa Monica State Beach stretches for miles, while the paved Marvin Broad Bike Trail runs roughly 22 miles along the Los Angeles County coastline. In many European capitals, a 22-mile route would take you through several districts and possibly into another municipality. In Los Angeles, it can still be described casually as the beach path. That sort of abundance is easy to underestimate from overseas. News coverage naturally concentrates on what goes wrong in America because ordinary pleasure rarely becomes breaking news. Nobody sends a correspondent to report that thousands of people spent Sunday eating tacos near the ocean and went home happy. Yet those ordinary Sundays are exactly what travelers remember. After several weeks in California, the seductive part is no longer Hollywood. It is realizing that sunshine, coastline, and open public space can slide into an ordinary Tuesday without ceremony. That may explain why some European visitors start looking at their return tickets with considerably less enthusiasm. Los Angeles does not merely sell the California dream. In many places, it leaves the front gate open. Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Chicago has one of those American surprises that sounds almost suspicious until you see it yourself. Some of the most valuable waterfront in a major city was never handed over entirely to private development. Luxury hotels or members-only clubs, much of it was kept for ordinary people. That idea becomes especially powerful after arriving through O'Hare, because Chicago is often introduced overseas through a very different collection of images. Crime statistics, political arguments, and dramatic headlines travel internationally much faster than a family riding bicycles beside Lake Michigan on a Sunday morning. The quieter picture rarely goes viral, even though it says far more about how the city actually feels to someone spending time there. Chicago's lakefront stretches for roughly 26 miles, and the city's public park system includes around 18 miles of lakefront trail. Beaches, parks, running paths, sports fields, marinas, gardens, museums, and picnic areas occupy land that would be worth an extraordinary amount if every foot had been converted into private real estate. That is where the cultural contrast becomes interesting. On parts of the Mediterranean coast, especially in Italy, private beach establishments can dominate long sections of prime shoreline during summer. In places such as Rimini, rows of rented umbrellas and loungers can stretch almost military straight across the sand. The system has its own charm and tradition, but access often comes with a chair number, a fee, and someone who knows exactly which umbrella belongs to you. Chicago takes a very different approach. A person can leave downtown, walk toward the lake, and suddenly find what feels like an inland sea with no resort wristband required. Lake Michigan is so large that the opposite shore disappears completely beyond the horizon. For a European visitor expecting an industrial Midwestern city, seeing sailboats, beaches, and a blue horizon beside skyscrapers can feel like discovering somebody secretly attached the Mediterranean to Illinois. There's even a uniquely American joke built into the geography. Chicago can give you a beach day with skyscrapers behind you, then remind you that the ocean in front of you contains no salt and is sitting hundreds of miles from the Atlantic. That public access explains part of the city's appeal more deeply than any postcard can. America is often portrayed abroad as a country where everything has a price tag attached, yet Chicago places some of its most beautiful urban scenery in public hands. Lincoln Park alone covers more than 100 acres along the north side, while the broader Chicago Park District manages hundreds of parks across the city. The message is surprisingly simple. The skyline may belong to billion-dollar companies, but the view of it can still belong to the person carrying a $5 sandwich. That changes how a long stay feels. During the 2026 World Cup period, European visitors who spend more than a few hurried tourist days in the United States can begin noticing these small freedoms that never make international headlines. They can run beside the lake before breakfast, sit on the grass without ordering anything, spend hours near the water without paying admission, and watch one of America's greatest skylines turn gold in the evening. There's nothing flashy about that experience, which is precisely why it becomes so memorable. The strongest advertisement for America may not always be something America is selling. Sometimes it is the fact that Chicago kept the best seat in the house open to everyone. Boston Logan International Airport. Boston has a clever little trick for visitors who think they already understand American ambition. It puts some of the country's most serious ideas inside neighborhoods full of students carrying iced coffee. That contrast is exactly why Logan Airport can become the doorway to one of America's most addictive cultural discoveries, the American college town. Greater Boston is home to dozens of colleges and universities, including Harvard, MIT, Boston University, Northeastern, Boston College, and Tufts. Harvard was founded in 1636, while MIT has spent generations turning scientific research into companies, inventions, and industries. The Boston region has become so closely tied to higher education that during the academic year, students seem to appear everywhere, as naturally as Dunkin' cups and Red Sox caps. For many European visitors, the interesting part is not academic prestige by itself. Europe has Oxford, Cambridge, Bologna, Heidelberg, and the Sorbonne, institutions whose histories can make even Harvard look relatively young. What feels different is the way American universities become complete social worlds. Walk around Cambridge and a campus is not merely a collection of lecture halls. There are bookstores, sports facilities, student newspapers, laboratories, clubs, alumni traditions, cafeterias, libraries open deep into the evening, and enough school merchandise to dress an entire family down to the dog. That last part can be wonderfully strange to Europeans. In France or Germany, graduating from a university does not necessarily mean spending the next 30 years wearing its name across your chest every Saturday. In America, a 70-year-old alumnus can pull on the same college sweatshirt he wore at 20, drive several hours for a football game, and discuss the rivalry as though the opposing school had personally insulted his grandfather. It sounds excessive until the deeper appeal becomes obvious. American universities are unusually good at turning education into belonging. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, US, colleges and universities enroll millions of students every year, while college athletics alone draws enormous crowds across the country. Yet the emotional attachment goes far beyond sports. Graduation, homecoming, alumni weekends, and campus traditions give people a permanent connection to a place where they once studied. For Europeans staying in Boston during the 2026 World Cup, this can reveal an America that television rarely bothers to show. The country often appears overseas as a non-stop argument about politics. Around Boston, another America is busy researching cancer treatments, launching startups, arguing over robotics, filling libraries, and ordering pizza at midnight because somebody has a paper due tomorrow morning. That energy can be surprisingly contagious. Boston also shows why young Europeans can become especially reluctant to leave after spending time in the United States. American culture has a remarkable talent for making possibility feel visible. A laboratory is across the street from a startup. A professor may know an investor, a student project can become a company. The distance between, I have an idea, and let's try it, sometimes feels shorter here. Naturally, not every student becomes the next tech billionaire, despite what campus hoodies occasionally suggest, but the atmosphere still matters. European universities offer extraordinary history and scholarship. Boston adds something unmistakably American to the formula. Ambition is allowed to be loud, enthusiastic, and slightly unreasonable. You arrive through Logan expecting an old New England city, then you discover that half the neighborhood seems to be working on tomorrow. Maybe the real surprise was never that European travelers came to America, but that many discovered a country warmer, richer, and more human than the version they had been warned about. Airports were only the doorway. What made people hesitate to leave was the life beyond them. So which city, habit, or everyday freedom do you think would surprise a first-time European visitor most? Tell us below, and subscribe for more stories about the America people only understand after arriving.